Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McLean starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. It's great to be on with you. The Coalition for Canceled Priests. There's a bit of a dust-up going on there, but we'll get into that. But in particular, what happens to canceled priests? What do they do after that? Who supports them? Who are these organizations? What kind of support do they receive and all of that? We've invited Dr. Anthony Stine from Return to Tradition. He's been reporting on the dust-up over at the Coalition for Canceled Priests, and he'll give us the lowdown on that story. Plus, hey, what's the real greater context here? What can anybody do to support priests who have been, say, unjustly canceled? We'll get into that at 30 past the hour. Robert Spencer is back on the show from jihadwatch.org. There is horrible news coming out about that concert that was attacked October the 7th in Israel by Hamas. Disgusting, disturbing stories. I don't want to give you the nitty-gritty details, but I do want to cover the story. Robert Spencer is going to give us the lowdown there. Plus, there's been some recent attacks by Islamic jihadis in Europe and abroad. He'll cover those as well. And he's got a book out. We got to ask him about that. That's coming up at 14 past the hour. I learned, I guess, just recently, Venezuela's decided to annex a piece of property that doesn't belong to them, belongs to the neighboring country, but they feel like they can take it over. I sure hope Congress doesn't give them $100 billion either. I mean, that would be bad. Anyway, we're going to cover all these stories in the show notes today. And you can find them linked up over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. You can find a bunch of other stuff there as well. Highly recommend you check it out. Again, thestationofthecross.com/ACT. Let's pray. Let's begin. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and now your saint of the day.
Saint Nicholas, pray for us. Born in the city of Patara in Asia Minor in the 3rd century, Nicholas was still an infant when he miraculously demonstrated his piety by observing the fasts of the church and refusing to nurse on Wednesdays and Fridays. As an adult, he entered a local monastery and before long was made the abbot. One day he discovered that 3 young women who lived nearby were in danger of falling into practicing prostitution because their father was too poor to give a satisfactory dowry for their marriage. On 3 nights in a row, Nicholas slipped a little bag of gold through their window, each bag sufficient to allow one of the girls to happily and honorably marry. This generosity gave rise to the saint's famous patronage of gift-giving. Nicholas was eventually made Archbishop of Myra, where he worked many miracles and defended the faith against persecution and heresy. He attended the Council of Nicaea, where he zealously supported the dogma of the Trinity, and at one point apparently slapped the heretic Arius in righteous anger, an outburst for which Nicholas humbly did penance afterwards. The holy archbishop died at Myra, most likely in the year 342. He is universally one of the most popular saints since the apostles, and many tales have arisen regarding his life, including a famous story where he resurrected 3 boys who were killed and dismembered by an evil butcher during a famine. Nicholas's feast is still celebrated with gift-giving in many places, though in the West this custom has mostly been transferred to Christmas. St. Nicholas, pray for us.
And now your headline news. The Hill reports Tuberville releasing hold of hundreds of military promotions. Senator Tommy Tuberville announced Tuesday that he is ending his months-long blockade of hundreds of military promotions. Tuberville said he is jumping on board with an idea presented by Senators Dan Sullivan from Alaska and Joni Ernst from Iowa that would release all of his holds on military officers at the 3-star level and below. He will hold, however, on the 10 nominations for 4-star general officers. Breitbart is reporting gold bars in Menendez case were at the center of the 2013 robbery. 4 gold bars discovered by federal authorities that embattled Senator Bob Menendez's New Jersey residence in 2022 have serial numbers tied to a 2013 armed robbery of Fred Diabas, one of the men accused of bribing Menendez. Menendez and his wife Nadine were accused in September of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars of bribes from 3 New Jersey businessmen in exchange for his influence and power as a senator to seek and protect and enrich them, according to the federal indictment. And Epoch Times is reporting traders informed of Hamas attack profited millions by short-selling Israeli stocks, study suggests. The Israeli government is investigating claims by American researchers that some stock traders may have had prior knowledge of the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel and used that information to earn millions of dollars by short-selling Israeli companies. In one example documented, 4.43 million new shares of Leumi, the largest bank in Israel, were short-sold between September the 14th and October the 5th. In the immediate aftermath of the Hamas attack, Leumi's share price dropped from a high of $8.50 per share on October the 4th to a low of $6.60 on October the 23rd, potentially allowing the trader to pocket a profit or at least avoid a loss over $8.7 million. So let me get this straight. Stock knew that these companies knew that they were going to lose all this money, and CNN knew, but the Israeli intelligence didn't know? Okay. Anyway, those are your headline news. The gospel today comes to us from Luke chapter 10, verses 1 through 9. And after these things, the Lord appointed also other 72. And he sent them 2 by 2 before his face into every city and place whither he himself was to come. And he said to them, the harvest indeed is great, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore that the Lord of the harvest, that he send laborers into his harvest. Go, behold, I send you as lambs among wolves. Carry neither purse, nor scrip, nor shoes, nor salute no man by the way. Into whatever house you enter, first say, peace be to this house. And if the Son of peace be there, your peace shall rest upon him. But if not, it shall return to you. And in the same house remain, eating and drinking such things as they have, for the laborer is worthy of his hire. Remove not from house to house. And into what city whatsoever you enter, and they receive you, eat such things as are set before you, and heal the sick that are therein, and say to them, the kingdom of God is come nigh unto you. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. You know, I don't think I've ever seen a commentary. I got to keep looking. Surely there's got to be some commentary out there about the fact that the Lord mentions twice in the same passage. Just maybe a sentence or two separating. Twice he says, eat the same food as set before you. Did he anticipate a problem with the apostles, their bishops, successors, missionaries being sent out, not wanting to eat the food set before them? Maybe it's because of the Jewish laws. Like he made this point to say, listen, you're going to go before Gentiles someday. You got to eat the food that they give. I haven't seen any commentary on that point. Not from Cornelius, not from Haydock. I got to go looking. There's got to be something somewhere on that. I find that utterly fascinating. At any rate, Haydock's Catholic Bible commentary today said, as Moses formally chose 12 elders as princes and fathers of the 12 tribes of Israel, and afterwards gave to each these elders 6 others to assist them in the arduous work of governing the people, so our divine Savior chose 12 apostles to govern his church. He likewise afterwards gave 6 disciples to each apostle, which makes 72, to serve as priests and assisting in governing the church. Father McKeely, in his exposition, said he sent them 2 by 2 for mutual support, protection, and edification, in order also that they might be witnesses of each other's demeanor, and their testimony rendered more credible. The same Heavenly prudence has been inculcated in the rules of religious communities when sending any of their members on legitimate business. He goes on to say, and to salute no one, by the way, our Lord by no means prohibits the exercise of courtesy and urbanity in returning salutations on the road. He refers to useless and long discourses that might mar the efficiency of their ministry, meaning that he should execute his commission with all possible dispatch without unnecessarily delaying anything. Close quote, Father Machiavelli, writing back in the 19th century. The great commentary of Cornelius a Lapide, Father a Lapide, says, "Go your way. Behold, I send you forth as lambs among wolves, that by your innocent and holy lives, through the power of my grace working in you, you may change the wolf into a lamb, i.e. convert evil men from the error of their way. Fear not, therefore, for under my protection no harm can befall you. For as St. Ambrose would say, the good shepherd takes care that the wolves do his flock no harm." Close quote, Father Cornelius a Lapide, the great commentary. I mean, I think that is a great place to just stop and meditate today. It is the will of God that all men should come to a knowledge of salvation, to include the wolves that would attack us, the wolves that would, of course, consume us, the wolves that would lead us astray, the wolves that might lead us astray to the point where we might end up in hell for all eternity. Their malice, their evilness, yeah, it's bad, but who's praying for them? Who's working towards converting them, winning their souls over? Because they might spend all eternity in hell. Maybe this Advent season, you might offer up a sacrifice or two, get on your knees, fast, pray, something for the wolves in sheep's clothing, because if you don't, who else is going to do that? Literally no one. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. Great to be on with you. Coming up at 30 past the hour, Dr. Anthony Stein from Return to Tradition is going to be on our show. We're going to cover the Coalition for Canceled Priests story, but we're also going to get to know, what happens to these canceled priests? Who supports them? What kind of support do they get? What's next for them? All of that and more with Dr. Stein coming up at 30 past the hour. Do join us if you can. But Robert Spencer, he's got a brand new book out, by the way. I got to check out the book. 400 pages. That's a pretty thick and serious piece of work. I'm going to have to get my hands on it and go through it. We'll have to have a conversation about that. The Empire of God, How the Byzantines Saved Civilization. But that's not why I've invited him on the program today. Unfortunately, there is horrible news coming out about what exactly happened on October the 7th by Hamas. And it is disgusting. And I wanted to get him to cover that, plus some of the attacks from Islamic terrorists in Europe and beyond. And Robert Spencer, good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Always good to talk to you, Joe. Thank you.
Hopefully the book's going well. You just released it?
Yep, just came out. Absolutely.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to have you back to talk about that. But I want to turn to this story out of Israel. The details are horrible. I don't actually want to share all the details. They're disgusting. I mean, I want you to cover it, but at the same time, I got to say, I can't wrap my head around the level of evil necessary. I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to say I speculate diabolic possession because I can't understand it otherwise. What say you, Robert Spencer?
Joe, I wouldn't doubt diabolic possession, but we have to understand this also from an Islamic context in which I think the diabolic possession is actually enabled. And that is there are two prongs to the idea here. One is terror. Terror is what this is all about. The jihadis read the Quran. The Quran says, strike terror in the enemies of Allah. That's chapter 8, verse 60. There are also two other verses that tell Muslims to strike terror in the infidels, 3:151 and 8:12. And that means that if you understand that to be the perfect word of the sole creator of the universe, that terror is, in a certain sense, a sacramental act. It's a holy, righteous act to terrify and terrorize those whom you think are the enemies of the supreme being. And so that's why they engage in this kind of behavior. They don't think of it as evil. They are the epitome of what the prophet Isaiah said, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. They not only think they're doing a good deed, but a righteous deed that will please Allah. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is humiliation, that this is the worst way they can think of to humiliate their enemies and degrade them. Because also the Quran says that the Jews who disobeyed Allah were transformed into apes and pigs, that the unbelievers are the most vile of created beings, that the unbelievers are like animals. And so if you think that that is what God is telling you, then to degrade them, to remind the unbelievers, to treat the unbelievers in this degraded way, as if that is indeed all that they are and all that they're worth, is once again a holy and righteous deed.
Okay, but St. Paul clearly says in Romans 1 that God wrote it on the heart of every man. So, does it not bother these people? I mean, the kinds of acts that are described, not only in your article, but in other articles, we're going to link to them in the show notes, that these men did to these women, but also to other men, both men and women received similar treatment there. They raped, mutilated, tortured. I mean, disgusting, depraved. Quran or no, how could they possibly live with themselves after behaving in this way? I mean, really, I just can't wrap my head around it. It is so foreign to me to read about the details of what happened on October the 7th. It must have been hell on earth. That's all I can say. It just must have felt like hell on earth.
I'm absolutely sure that there were some of them who did have pangs of conscience and whose consciences weren't entirely deadened. But we are talking about what Scripture calls liars whose consciences are seared. The lying they've been doing is to themselves. And that's where Quran is important, because they believe it to be the word of Allah. They think that this must be right because this is what Allah tells them to do. Now, I think nothing more clearly brings out the demonic character of what we're dealing with here in the Quran than behavior like this that is justified and even sanctified in Islam. But we have to be honest about it. That is what's going on. And all the cliches and sloganeering about Islam being a religion of peace are really just diverting us from dealing realistically with what we're up against here.
You also have a report over jihadwatch.org. Says U.S. State Department says Hamas won't release female hostages because they will tell about jihadi sex crimes. So, if it happened on that day, to humiliate, to, really crush them, I suppose, on October the 7th, then it's still happening just in the hostage cases in Gaza Strip.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because here again, Quran says you can take the infidel women and use them sexually. Sex slavery of infidel women is actually sanctioned in the Quran. I'll give the passages in case people are skeptical. Chapters 4, verse 3, 424, 23, 1-6, 3350, and 7030. They make it very clear that the so-called captives of the right hand, who are non-Muslim women, can be used in this way. Actually, Islamic law says if a woman is captured, then her marriage is immediately annulled. And so this is the kind of thing that we're dealing with. The permission is specifically and explicitly given that a man can marry 4 wives, but also have these captives of the right hand. And so you have women who've been forced into what's essentially prostitution and sex slavery. This is not limited to Hamas. We saw the same thing with ISIS, and we saw the same thing with Boko Haram in Nigeria. And we see this with these various jihad groups precisely because it's sanctioned in the Quran and in Islamic law.
I've seen reports that say there's been some recent Islamic attacks, knife attacks in France, and then, of course, there was the bombing in the Philippines over the weekend. Has there been an increase in attacks, or are we just, is it more of the same? Is it up? Is it down? Where are we at with that?
Well, it is up, and it's up since October 7th because the jihadis see October 7th as a massive victory, and so they think, now is the time. See, Allah is blessing our efforts, and so now is the time to press forward more aggressively than ever. And so the jihadis have been emboldened in Europe and emboldened in really all over the world.
Yeah. These are crazy stories. It's really mind-boggling to think about. I mean, Europe is basically lost, it seems, and you even have an article on that. Germany, former spy chief says Europeans will succumb to Islam. Europe will have Muslim majority by 2200, so AD 2200.
Yeah, I think he's way late on that. I think it's going to happen far earlier.
I was just about to make that point. That seems like a long way off when they're being overrun by the day. What does that world look like to the rest of us? Can you just describe what it looks like when Europe is no longer run by Europeans, but rather by Islam?
That's a very important question, Joe, because I don't think a lot of people have thought this through. You have nuclear weapons in France. You have nuclear weapons in Britain. So if you have Islamic republics in those countries, where are the nuclear weapons going to be pointing? At the United States. It's going to isolate the United States like never before on the world stage, and you're going to have the hostility of those countries toward the United States be absolutely unmitigatable, like we see right now with the Islamic Republic of Iran. The same ethos will prevail in Europe. This will also entail the destruction of the monuments of Christian Europe, because the idea of representational art is considered idolatrous. The idea that Jesus died on a cross is considered blasphemous. And so you have representations of the Lord on the cross. Those will have to be destroyed and brought down. That also is a holy act, because Muhammad predicts that at the end of the world, Jesus will come back and break all the crosses because they offend him. And so Muslims can engage in this righteous deed now by breaking crosses. We're already seeing this happening in churches in Europe. It's going to happen wholesale. And the magnificent artistic patrimony of Western civilization will be obliterated entirely because it offends Allah.
Is there any country in your mind, your top of your mind, that you could point to that's maybe doing a good job of pushing back against this trend?
Oh, yeah. The European Union is suicidal and is pushing mass migration policies on its member states, but Hungary is persistently and resolutely pushing back, saying Hungary is not going to submit to Islamization and is not going to accept these mass migration quotas. There are other countries in Central Europe, notably Poland, that are also fighting back to a lesser degree. And so Central Europe is actually a beacon of light and of hope in all of this. But Western Europe, the situation, unless there's some massive change, looks very dire.
Hungary's been holding the line. I got to talk to the ambassador to the Vatican from Hungary when I was in Rome a few weeks back. A great conversation about what they've been doing over there to hold that line. But look at what about Poland? You know, Poland is holding the line now, but it seems like the next generation, you know, of young people that are going to be taking over that country, you know, in the next couple of decades, they may be a lot more liberal than their parents and their grandparents. I think things could change there. Do you see it too?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that there was just an election in which the left made significant gains. It also should be noted that there was a hijab-wearing woman who was recently caught planting a bomb on a street in Warsaw. And so it's not as if the Poles have completely escaped this, and it's likely that in the name of diversity and multiculturalism and all that business that it's been sold to Western Europe by means of, that the same thing will come to Poland, and then Poland will give way. There's certainly an immense amount of pressure. Russia is actually weaponizing Muslim migrants to the extent that Finland has just closed its border with Russia because Russia was sending all these Afghans and other jihadis into Finland. Poland could be up for the same treatment.
Now, I heard there was a knife attack in Ireland yesterday, and then, of course, they banned the rosary in Spain. I mean, these countries that are traditionally Catholic countries, they feel lost. But there's been some pushback, at least in Spain. The fact that they're having rosary rallies, I think, is a good positive sign. Any hope that we'll see a comeback there?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I was very heartened to see so many Spaniards out on the street saying Spain is Christian, not Muslim. This is the first kind of pushback we've seen since really 9/11, right? Not long after 9/11, there was an attack in Spain, and Spain immediately folded and elected a socialist government that was essentially adopting a capitulationist stance toward mass Muslim migration, including unvetted jihadis. But now that may be changing.
Yeah. Robert Spencer, jihadwatch.org. Thank you for your time today. Really appreciate having you on, giving us some coverage on these stories. And oh my. I mean, you explain the Quran and all, but my brain still can't comprehend the level of evil that is described in the article. We're going to put a link to it on the show notes, but jihadwatch.org is the website. Robert, God bless you. God love you. Have a great day, sir. Make sure to check out his book, Empire of God, How the Byzantines Saved Civilization. I'm going to try to get a copy and go through it. Maybe we'll have him back just to talk about that. That'd be fun to do. But don't go anywhere. Coming up after the break, Dr. Anthony Stein is back from Return to Tradition. We're going to be talking about the Coalition for Canceled Priests. What's going on over there? But what's going on with these priests? What comes next for them? That's one of the questions. It's all coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain, and here are your headline news. CNA reports parish priest in Nigeria abducted while answering sick call. The diocese announced December the 1st that Father Kingsley Eze, who serves as the parish priest of St. Michael's Catholic Church in Nigeria's Imo State, was kidnapped at approximately 8 p.m. that evening while traveling to administer the sacrament of the anointing of the sick to a parishioner. His whereabouts is still unknown. The Information Service of the Pontifical Mission Societies gathered witness accounts for the kidnapping, indicating that the gunmen attacked the priest and another person as they got out of their car at an intersection. Fox News is reporting Speaker Johnson gives Biden an ultimatum on Ukraine funding and immigration. Johnson issued the ultimatum in a Tuesday letter to the White House. Johnson's letter says Ukraine aid is dependent upon enactment of transformative change to our nation's border security laws. The U.S. has already contributed well over $100 billion to Ukraine's war effort since Russia invaded the country in February of 2022. Johnson first announced plans to pair Ukraine aid and immigration funding to the same bill in early November. LifeSite News is reporting Pentagon data shows heart failure spiked nearly 1,000% among pilots in 2022. In a video uploaded to social media, Lieutenant Macy cited a July letter from U.S. Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, Gilbert Cisneros Jr., acknowledging the authenticity of previously exposed data from the Pentagon's Defense Medical Epidemiology Database, which shows that 2021 saw a drastic spike in a variety of diagnoses for serious medical issues. Lieutenant Macy also stated that he found major spikes in several heart-related ailments on the previous 5-year average, including hypertension, up 36%, ischemic heart disease, up 69%, pulmonary heart disease, up 62%, heart failure, up 973%, cardiomyopathy, up 152%, and other non-specified heart diseases, up 63%. But besides that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Those are your headline news. Hey, good morning to everybody on iCatholic Radio. Appreciate you guys being on the team as always. iCatholic Radio is the bedrock of our apostolate and is growing, and we appreciate you guys being here. You can download iCatholic Radio for free in your iOS or Android app store, and you can get all kinds of content to include a documentary film that we're about to release in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be ICR Plus. It's going to be included in the app, and we're going to have you download that in your app store to get ready for it, if you would. We'll put links to it at the show notes over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT, how to get a hold of our app anyway. But joining us this morning is Dr. Anthony Stein, here to talk about the Coalition for Canceled Priests. There was a story that he broke, really, because I didn't see too many other people talking about it. The Coalition for Canceled Priests just canceled its founder, which made me want to ask some more bigger questions about the coalition or canceled priests in general. So he's here to join us to give us the story. Dr. Stein, good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, and thanks for having me back on.
Let's talk about I want to get into the story that you broke. I definitely want to talk about that, but can we just back up and just be more general for a moment? Let's talk about canceled priests. How many are we talking about? Do you have any idea the scope of canceled priests, or like what happens to these men after they get canceled? And I'm assuming we're going to just generally think that these are men who have been canceled, maybe unjustly, like they didn't really deserve the treatment that they got. Like, what happens to these men?
So there are hundreds of these priests out there. Some of them were canceled early in their career, like Father Lavelle was initially. And I bring him up because Father Altman issued a response on behalf of the Coalition for Canceled Priests last night, which I covered this morning. And it was in his usual, very hot sort of way he has of expressing ideas. But Father Lavelle was canceled fairly early in his own ecclesiastical career. Father Altman fairly late in his career. Then you have Archbishop Vigano's organization, Exsurge Domine, which will support even canceled seminarians, because there are seminarians who make it into the transitional diaconate who then get canceled for being too traditional. And this is actually a very widespread problem in the seminaries in a lot of dioceses, where seminarians will have devotions to the rosary and pray the traditional breviary, have ideas that would be recognizably Catholic that no clergyman wouldn't have had in centuries past, and then they get canceled for their troubles for being too rigid and too clericalist.
Wow.
And so, there's numbers of these organizations that now, there's at least 2 organizations, 3 now, that Father Lavelle appears to be starting a new one. And it's really more of an indictment of the state of the church than anything else. Why should such organizations exist? The fact that not only is there one organization, now there's like 3 at least, that tells you something. That there's something very seriously wrong going on in the institutional church.
What kind of support do these organizations provide these men?
From what I've read of the Coalition for Canceled Priests, they provide some material support. So financial support so they can actually feed themselves and travel and do some of their ministry. I would assume that they do some coordination also, so these priests can offer sacraments when, for whatever reason, laity in some places don't trust their local dioceses, which is another very real problem and a very real indication of how bad things have gotten in the church, where there are laity who realize that who've come to believe for whatever reason that they cannot trust the diocesan authorities anymore.
Now, I think it obviously varies from case to case in a particular canceled priest situation about their canonical status or like what their future is. But is there anything we could say in a general way about, like, do these men hope to be reincarnated at some point or put back into active ministry? I mean, what is the hope for their future?
I would assume that most of those priests and those organizations hope that when you get more moderate or conservative leadership in Rome with a new Holy Father, which people keep predicting is going to happen soon, which strikes me as ghoulish to do. But when people keep predicting that kind of to be happening, I suspect a lot of these bishops or a lot of these priests are hoping that with a new pope will come more support from the Vatican itself, which may or may not happen. I mean, Benedict XVI's reign famously would have communications sent about from the United States and Western European countries warning them of predatory priests, and nothing was done. And not because Benedict chose not to act, but because, as he once famously told John Venari, the now late editor of the Catholic Family News, he had a face-to-face meeting with him, and he told him that he doesn't get much of the mail that's sent to him. And sometimes the first time he hears about an allegation is when people tell him face-to-face. And it turned out that the Lavender groups, the James Martin types, were intercepting things. And not James Martin himself, not saying that about him, but priests with those kinds of inclinations were intercepting the mail. And that's pretty well documented at this point.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say George Weigel even mentions that sort of filtering happening in the JP2 pontificate. Father Malachi Martin also mentions that in the book of the Jesuits, and how there's handlers that surround these popes really do get to filter what happens, what information they get, etc. Do you think that's true also in the Francis pontificate? Do you feel like the people around him are filtering that information? So he's maybe making some of these off the cuff remarks. I'm not trying to Pope-splain here, but I'm just curious about what you think about that. Do you think he's also suffering from that same sort of handler type of misinformation?
I would just say that if I were in their position, just because we had a pope who is more friendly to their position than before, I would not dismantle my infrastructure for controlling the flow of information. That would just seem imprudent. Popes do come and go, but the bureaucracy seems to be forever.
Yeah, so true. That's true in America. That's true at the Vatican as well. I mean, and I suppose there's ups and downs to that. The government needs to run, so you need the bureaucracy in place no matter what to do it. But at the same time, that can keep us in nature being what it is. Power and control is a heavy temptation. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that, I would say, for sure. Let me just ask you this, going back to those organizations, before we get into the specifics of what's going down at the Coalition for Canceled Priests, is there any overlap between the two and now potentially a third organization? Do they overlap? Can they support one another? Is one organization helping in one way and another helping in a different way? I mean, or is it really just, good old fashioned capitalism and, each doing the same exact thing, offering a different take on it?
I wish that they were working together, but one of the first things that happened when Father Lavelle issued his letter to the public, signed by Father Von Traco and a few others, that you may remember when Father Traco's homily went viral online when the remnant put it on YouTube about it was one of the first. He was one of the first priests to issue a statement, give a homily to his parish, calling out the Vatican for a lot of the things we see going on now. And he ended up getting canceled for it a few months later. He was one of the signers of this. One of the first things that happened in response to that statement was Archbishop Vigano tweeting that he had personally washed his hands of the Coalition for Canceled Priests some time ago. To which Father Lavelle responded that they washed their hands of him some time ago. And there were some accusations that they're just accusations at this point. So I haven't seen any evidence. That's why I don't feel comfortable, publicly talking about those things. But they're not, to put it mildly, they're not on the same page. So they will be, unfortunately, competing for resources, which even if they were working together, they would still be competing for resources. But it would be nice to have some coordination.
I would imagine it's difficult for someone to average Catholic, suburban going Catholic, to look at this situation and go, aren't these men operating outside of the confines of Holy Mother Church? Aren't they operating outside the structure of Holy Mother Church? I mean, we talked about the bureaucracy a minute ago. It is what it is, but these men seem to be operating outside of that. What would you say to that, Anthony Stein?
The church has been here before. I've never been against Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre or the SSPX. In fact, I actually think that the actions he took were tragic but necessary, and I think we're in that same kind of position today. And this is why I've actually publicly put out there before that it would be very good for Archbishop Vigano to work to at least get some ideas from the SSPX, some of their bishops, some guidelines for how to maintain positive relations with Rome, because despite what many people who they're from the internet magisterium, I'll call it, have said, where they'd have declared unilaterally the SSPX to be in schism when the Vatican never said that. They've called them schismatic, but there's a difference between being schismatic and being in schism. Schismatic is an attitude. Schism is a status, right? And it would be a very good idea for all these groups to maintain some kind of tie to Rome, even if it's just a communication. Here's our notification. We ordained these men, and Vatican maybe never responds, but at least acknowledging their authority. One of the keys to this is noting that, for instance, with the example of the Society of St. Pius X, their priests offer the Mass in union with the Pope. Even if they don't agree with the thing he does, they still offer the Mass in union with him. And most of the priests we're talking about here do that. Father Altman has come, I believe, out in support of the Benedict was the real Pope position, which I differentiate from sedevacantism, because sedevacantism is its own explicitly defined position. And I don't know that I've ever heard Father Altman call John Paul II an anti-pope, as an example. But which is usually one of the defining features of sedevacantism, is that all the popes from John the 23rd to today have been anti-popes. Whereas if you believe Benedict was the real pope, by definition, you're not on the same side as those others. But I've heard Father Altman say things in line with the Benny Papist position, as some call it. And it can be dicey.
We are at a moment we have to take a pause and a break. We're talking with Dr. Anthony Stine from Return to Tradition. ReturnToTradition.org is his website. We're going to put a link to it in our show notes as well over at the stationofthecross.com/ACT. I encourage you to check that out. But, I want to get into the story of the Coalition for Canceled Priests. What exactly is happening there? I mean, especially it's like on the heels of the church militant story, which we reported on again yesterday. I know Dr. Stein's also reported on that story as well. But I want to get into what's going down at the Coalition for Canceled Priests, what its future looks like in detail, coming up right after this break. But I'd be incredibly grateful to you if you would share us with a friend. Hit that like button, hit that share button, or just text a buddy, email, whatever you can do. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. It's great to be on with you. Praise be to God. I just put up a poll on our YouTube feed, which you can find linked up at the stationofthecross.com/ACT. You just scroll down, you'll see the live video player there, and just underneath it, there's some icons, and you can click that YouTube one to get action where you can comment on the show, interact live with you in the after show, which we do at the top of the hour. We say goodbye to the radio. We stay on the live video feed to interact and read your commentary. And I'm just curious, do you think Bishop Strickland should join the Coalition for Canceled Priests? So far, 67% say yes, and 33% say no. So maybe more of that coming up in the after show today. But Dr. Anthony Stine is our guest. ReturnToTradition.org is his website. And we're talking about the Coalition for Canceled Priests. Dr. Stein, welcome back. So there was we were dealing with the church militant story and their potentially being dissolved, which breaks my heart. And in spite of their behavior and some of their members, some of them I didn't mind so much, but in spite of all of that, it breaks my heart to see a Catholic media organization go down like that. So praying for that situation. But now the Coalition for Canceled Priests has had a bit of a dust up. Tell us about that.
So a couple of days ago, I guess this would have been Friday of last week, Father Lavelle put out a letter on Twitter and on their websites, I guess, announcing that he had been essentially canceled by the Coalition for Canceled Priests. It's a short letter signed by 3 other priests, maybe 4 other priests. And he denied any malfeasances or any bad things on his own fault. He said he didn't do X, Y, and Z things. No allegations of matters of the flesh, we'll call it. What ended up happening is a couple of days later, Father Altman yesterday had a letter publicly published on Twitter through another organization responding to this, and he denied most of what they said, if not all of it, including that an allegation Father Lavelle made was that he was never invited to participate in an investigation. He was never given a due process, basically. And as it turns out, well, at least according to Father Altman, that's not true. Father Altman denies that and says that Father Lavelle refused to work with their investigators on things. And this has to do with like financial issues, who's qualified to lead the Coalition for Canceled Priests, and how the way the organization had been run until very recently was setting it up to come into the crosshairs of the IRS, which is no joke. Right, especially in this day and age when we find out the FBI are spying on Catholic organizations, you want to make sure everything you do is perfectly fine, right to the letter of the law. And so it's worth remembering that before he was a priest, Father Altman was a lawyer and trained in business law. So he's actually he's one who you would have, or you would hope would run such an organization. And so now you have this conflict between the two, and Father Lavelle appears to be starting a new organization similar to the Coalition for Canceled Priests as a result. I don't think we've heard the last of this. I would be paying attention to Twitter where all this stuff seems to happen. to see when Father Lavelle responds to this letter. Because again, he can't, just like I said, when Father Lavelle issued his letter, the Coalition for Canceled Priests has to respond. And in Father Altman's letter, he said the coalition will itself be responding very shortly. But Father Lavelle will probably have to respond to this too. I don't know how long this is going to go on, but I suspect we're going to be seeing what I have been noticing lately is a further fragmentation of things on the more traditional side of things, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and I would imagine that's not going to help the cause if you can't unite the clans. I talked to Michael Matt about uniting the clans when I was in Rome. Hopefully that footage will come out soon from my time there. But it's a noble effort. But golly gee whiz, we're a cliquey bunch. We don't get along very well, do we?
No, if you don't hold to my very specific arcane understanding of the crisis in the church, then a pox on your house and you're not actually Catholic. You may as well just go become Anglican. That seems to be the actual attitude about things.
Which is crazy, and it's sad to see this level of dysfunction just getting worse. We're not helping our cause in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so I want to ask you this question, because 75% of people say yes right now, 25% say no. With Bishop Strickland now being canceled, retired early, still in good standing, let's just make sure that everybody understands Bishop Strickland, Cardinal Burke, Archbishop Gonswine, the bishop in Puerto Rico, all these examples, they're all still in good standing with the Holy Mother Church. Do you think Bishop Strickland should join the Coalition for Canceled Priests? Should canceled priests in general, despite the organization, should they have a bishop that sort of leads their cause and protects them in some way?
In general, I would say yes, as long as they act more like a priestly fraternity and not start going into issues of jurisdiction and things of that nature. Priests need a bishop. They just do. I don't know if Bishop Strickland specifically should join the Coalition for Canceled Priests or that new competing organization. I've suggested before that he should contact Archbishop Vigano for Exsurge Domine, because they're an Italian organization that now has a North American operation. And Vigano is not exactly a young man anymore. So there will need to be a succession figured out there. But these bishops, they are needed. It's a simple fact. And when they get canceled, most of them have nothing else to do but write books and give speeches. And there is something more productive they can do, which would be to make sure that these priests don't succumb to the temptation to go off the rails. Because people tend to think in terms of administration, but remember, the devil goes after priests harder than anybody else. The priests come under spiritual attack more than anybody else. And a bishop may not be able to give them like jurisdictional faculties and that kind of thing. So exorcism authorization and that sort of thing. But at the very least, he can provide leadership and spiritual counsel and the other basic aspects that a bishop and a presbyter would have in their relationship.
I was once told that priests can be canceled. Priests can be fired. They can be let go. They can be cut into the wind. But you can't actually technically cancel a bishop. You have to charge them with a crime and then laicize them, McCarrick being an example of that, I suppose. But if there's no crime, you can't cancel a bishop. You might take them away from their duties, their tasks, their job, their diocese, or what have you, but you can't cancel them. They're still bishops in good standing. Do you see that difference? And because to me, that complicates the matter in these canceled priests, because their canonical status is more gray. It's more limbo. The church has never, in its antiquity, had never been designed just to have, independent priests roaming about doing whatever. It was always a priest serves a bishop, and now these men aren't. Yeah,
and this is why I think they really should have a bishop of some kind, even if it's just in this weird informal way until better leadership finally emerges in Rome, whether that's in the next 2 years or the next 25 years. Having independent priests is never a good thing. As someone who is very supportive of the SSPX, even though I rarely have ever been to Mass with them, I do hope for the day that they're being in canonical limbo, because they're not in schism, but they have a weird canonical status where that situation gets resolved too. All of these situations need to be resolved, but it won't be until orthodoxy is reestablished in the church, where at least ambiguity in teaching is erased, where we now have clear, basic, fundamental teaching again. And that's I don't know what it's going to take for that.
Yeah. We're coming down to the wire here with Dr. Anthony Stein. We're talking about the Coalition for Canceled Priests. I don't want to launch into too many more questions here. And Dr. Stein, you're welcome to hang out with us in the after show if you want to continue our conversation. I'd love to have you. But that's going to give you, my dear listener, an opportunity to participate directly. If you're on one of the live video feeds, you can comment. And the way to do that is to go to thestationofthecross.com/ACT and just scroll down to the live video player and just click one of those icons underneath. Facebook, we have Rumble, we have YouTube. Those are the best places. You can also comment on Twitter as well. But thestationofthecross.com/ACT is the website. And while you're there, might you consider an end-of-year gift? It's a great tax-deductible opportunity if you live in the United States, and it's a wonderful way to support our apostolate. But again, return to tradition.org. I'm sure he'll cover more news and stories on that subject as it breaks. But we're going to say goodbye there tomorrow. We're going to talk about Our Lady of Guadalupe. It's coming up tomorrow. God love you.
And we are back. Welcome to the after show, everyone.
Good morning, everybody. Mike K. Praise be to God. Good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Sharon, hope you're feeling well from sunny Florida. Praise be to God. Good morning to you. Laura L. Damon, good morning to you. Paul, our friend from Buffalo. What is it? Sunny and balmy in Buffalo today? I'm not sure.
Some of that nice, warm, sunny snow was coming down this morning.
Sunny snow in Buffalo, New York. I froze at least one day while I was there. That felt good. Felt really good. T-Storm, good morning to you. Eileen, refreshing. Troy Lockett, good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate having you guys on the team. Sylvia, good morning to you. Thanks for doing it. I see Lizzie here from Dublin. Praise be to God. Hey, was there another Dublin? Was there another knife attack in Dublin? Let me know. I saw Twitter action on it, but I didn't look into it because it was late. I had to go to bed. Frank Rangel, Deborah, good morning to you. Female KC Royals fan, welcome back. Let's see, Candlesticks, good morning to you. Praise be to God. The Lost Creole. Oh, where are you now if you're lost? You must not be in Louisiana then, I suppose. Lights 10, good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Praise be to God. Carl Thomas, welcome back. Glad you're here. Angel Knight, yes, I probably should have added a not sure option to the poll, but there's no way to edit the poll now, so sorry, it is what it is. 62% say yes, and 38% say no. I'm going to be honest, I'm surprised by that number. I expected it to be higher. But hey, honesty is good. Praise be to God. Pete Santos, good morning to you. You grew up in the TLM. I could follow and understand the Mass prior to Vatican II. Okay, that reminds me, Pete. What's that?
Lights 10 says, Dr. Stein can hang out if he puts the Santa hat on.
Oh, well.
I've actually been looking for my Santa hat. That's someone who's been listening for a long time. I had a Santa hat that I wore at least once last year, I think. And I even had, like, when I was speaking from behind a Belloc image of Hilaire Belloc with shades.
Those are the good old days.
Yeah.
I have one of him with a Santa hat on. I just don't know where mine went. My kids love the ones I got for them, though. They run, my 2-year-old and my 5-year-old run around the house with theirs on.
Can I share a secret with you guys? You got to promise not to tell anybody, okay? So we do a secret Saint Nick, where part of our celebration of Saint Nicholas's feast day is my wife bought two actual costumes of Saint Nicholas, and one of my sons usually dresses up in the costume, and we deliver a stocking full of things secretly to people in our neighborhood. And because everybody has doorbell cameras, they're wearing the costume. So the idea is, hopefully, because we live in the state of Texas, and you don't want strangers sneaking around, leaving things in your doorstep. Usually people get shot like that in Texas. So hopefully the Saint Nick costume, hopefully the Saint Nick costume prevents unnecessary violence while trying to deliver, religious items to people's porches. So it's just a fun tradition.
Sounds like the making of a really, like a low budget Christmas violent movie in the vein of like Die Hard, but not nearly as well executed.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you just reminded me. So there's a gentleman at our parish who is a Hollywood screenwriter, I mean, he has been for many years. He's sold many screen scripts to Hollywood, Netflix, and whatever. He and I were chatting on Sunday after Mass, and we were chatting about a project that I was working on with my daughter, where we were writing a screenplay for a series on the end times. And he told me, he pulled up on his phone an email he got from his agent, and he said Netflix is actively trying to buy projects that are faith-based. They want to ride the wave of The Chosen. So Chosen, which I don't love and don't recommend, because Chosen's Mormon, not Christian. But if I could make Chosen
anything that
Catholic,
shows Our Lady, anybody who shows Our Lady and having labor pains, I'm not interested in watching.
Yes, exactly, 100%. I'm on that team, 100%. Chosen drives me absolutely mad.
Hey, if Netflix is going to tap into that market, they should. Although, even though it's not a faith-based film, and the media kept telling us it was a faith-based film, if Netflix is going to do that, then they should put Sound of Freedom on streaming for Netflix. Every major streaming platform has said no to that movie. Having seen that movie, it strikes me as sort of like a mid-tier, middle-aged and older guy goes to do justice. Like you've seen Equalizer. It's the same kind of movie as that, except a lot less violent. Yeah. But it's not a faith movie. Just because Caviezel quotes scripture a few times in the movie doesn't make it a faith movie.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Lizzie, good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out today. Says it's great to see Dr. Anthony on again. Great man. I've learned so much from him the past few years. He's a mine of information. God bless him. Praise be to God. You just reminded me of something else too. What was it? Oh yeah, Equalizer. I grew up on the television show Equalizer with the British guy and driving the Jaguar.
I've never seen it. And I'm not usually one for let's take a character who has been ethnically swapped and make him into whatever in vogue group is of the moment in a movie. And I don't remember if there is any like objectionable language in Equalizer. There is no like sex stuff in it, which I approve of. But even my wife, who's not really into action movies, she liked Equalizer.
Like the Denzel Washington one?
Or the old because one. He had a dark the Denzel Washington one. Because he had a dark background as like an assassin or something for the government and was trying to live like a normal person, and good people around him were getting hurt. So he decided to use his very special set of skills to get scales of justice back.
It's such an original. What I like is that it's such an original concept.
Oh yeah, the Equalizer, or the excessive violence.
I was saying that when you have a formerly violent person who wants to live in peace, but then he has to put his violent skills to use in vigilante situation. That's never been used by the Punisher.
Never.
Taken.
It's weirdly it's weirdly the most overused. It's the most overused plot arc in all of Hollywood, but it works.
It's always good,
and you know why?
Yeah,
because action movies, no matter how ridiculous an action movie is, as long as it's not like a sci-fi movie, if it's just an action movie, all you're watching is a Western that has been dressed up to take place in the modern day. That's all it is. Yep. So if you don't believe me, go watch Lethal Weapon, and then you could probably find. Well, don't watch Lethal Weapon on VidAngel, and then go find a Western that's about a buddy cop Western, and you'll probably find it's the same movie.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. I got to say, though, I love Denzel Washington as an actor. He's arguably my favorite actor of this modern era. I like him a lot. I've liked his body of work, even though I haven't loved every movie he's ever done. And I have to say, Equalizer is incredibly violent. I mean, it's violence porn is really what it is.
Oh, he almost, except I've seen far more violent movies than that. But there's one of the best bits of cinematography I've ever seen was in Equalizer 1 and 3. And in the first movie, there's somebody who held up the store that he's working at. This is just normal, just try to be a normal person job. Mm. And he figures out how to track the person down to get back something personal that was stolen from one of his coworkers. Yeah. And the only thing you don't see him deal with the person at all. All you see him do is take a sledgehammer and then come back later, wiping it off after he's resolved the situation.
Yeah,
and put it
that's the way to do it.
And it's one of the most it's the most effective piece of cinematography I've ever seen.
That was the good thing about Sound of Freedom. When I went to go see Sound of Freedom with my wife, I was like cringing and thinking, "Oh man, am I going to see things I don't want to see? I'm never going to be able to unsee some of this. They did such a good job of using inference rather than just being explicit. And then when I interviewed Eduardo Verástegui, he said they intentionally didn't tell the children actors anything about the story. So they had to film this in a way that the kids wouldn't be in on the secret so that they wouldn't be scandalized personally. Of course, they're older now because they filmed it 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever it was. So those kids may know about it now, but at the time when they were filming it, I'm like, that's brilliant. Like, that's demonstrating something.
It is.
You know, so we need more of that, please.
This famously faith-based movie made by the famous faith-based studio, Fox. That's who made it originally. It wasn't video. You know, Angel Studios did not make Sound of Freedom. They bought it from Disney, who got it as a package deal when they bought Fox. And so when people talk about that, they need to remember that that movie itself cost about $5 million for Angel Studios to get from Disney. So they made a boatload of money off that movie. Just a boatload.
Big time. Right? Yeah, sure they did. Hey, Damon says, I would never get a Netflix subscription. I had one for years, but then I canceled it because I couldn't take their blasphemies anymore. But, you know, it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope in the sense that, you know, where are you going to go? Are you going to go on Netflix? Or say YouTube. I'm on YouTube right now. I'm on YouTube, and there's tons of blasphemy on YouTube. You know, so it's like
there's tons of blasphemy, and there's like ways to have impurity on there.
And Amazon Prime also has these things. So it's really bad. And I guess at the end of the day, I don't believe in 100% boycott. I don't believe it's possible, even if you tried. I guarantee that if you give a tip to a waiter or a waitress today, you don't know what they're going to do with that tip money. You don't know if they're going to use it to buy crack, a prostitute, or traffic a child. You have no idea what they're going to do with their money. They could do horrible things with the money you just handed to them. So at the end of the day, 100% boycotts are impossible. Apple, Microsoft, all the computers we use, those companies are involved in really horrible things that we cannot as Catholics support. So we're surrounded by it. We can't limit it. But at the end of the day, I think we can make some smart choices and choose personal choices. Like, I can choose not to be on Netflix, even if, say, you choose to be on Netflix. I'm not going to judge you for that, but I'm choosing not to be on it for sure. And then when I try to watch a film, 99.9% of the time, I'm trying to watch it through VidAngel. The Mormons. I mean, why aren't Catholics leading the way on this one more time? Remind me one more time. Why today? Like, this has gotten so bad. The Mormons, the only ones stepping up to the plate. And, of course, not Christians, the Mormons. But at the same time, they're the ones at least leading in this cause to filter these movies so that we can have some entertainment without this junk in our face. But the other thing is, what's killing me is the Angel Studios. Every Catholic filmmaker running towards Angel Studios to have their projects made because it's ready out of the box. Show up, got script in hand, great. We've got cinematographers, we got cameras, we got actors, we got lights, we got it all, costumes, whatever. So the Mormons are now the Hollywood, and they're out of Utah. Like, where's the Catholic effort to? If I had George Soros kind of money, I'd build a studio, and I would totally compete directly with Angel Studios because we need solid Catholic education, solid Catholic entertainment, solid Catholic information, solid Catholic production, produced by Catholics, run by Catholics, promoted for Catholics. And unfortunately,
there's a reason you don't see it. You don't see it because Catholics were successfully folded into the broader culture back in the 50s and 60s. I will never forget seeing Ann Coulter talk about how Catholics were not even Americans until after the 60s when we all got folded into the church. I'm like, yeah, we became Americans, and most of us became servants of Moloch there by becoming hardline Democrats. This isn't one of those. After the 60s, it became like, how could you possibly vote for the party that overtly supports abortion? I get why people don't want to support the Republicans because they've always been all talk basically about abortion, right. And frankly, they're all about usury and war.
What about marriage?
I like during election years, I usually refer to the Republicans as the party of usury and war, and the Democrats as the party of Moloch, usury, and war, because the difference between the two is at least one has decent rhetoric about abortion.
Yeah,
but but that's why you don't have those kind of movies, is because we got so subsumed into the regular culture.
It's terrible.
I have seen Catholics on Twitter defend watching the original Game of Thrones. I say the original because House of the Dragon apparently doesn't have much of any nudity.
Yeah.
Any like, at least
I
not
heard
yet.
that.
They've only had one season, but amazing. They want to focus on their plot instead of filling with a bunch of junk that just is meant to draw people to sin. Like I've seen people defend watching the original Game of Thrones.
That's horrible.
I'm like, look,
Hey,
if you're,
yeah.
I can get it if your job is to be a film reviewer or something for like a big media outlet, so it's your job to watch that trash. I get at least going through the mental gymnastics at that point. But come on, for anybody else, this should not be a mental gymnastics game. So it should just be I'll go watch something else.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Yvonne says she's reminding me that, in fact, as Catholics, we have spent a lot of money to make movies. She gives me a good example. The Rocket Man. We all funded that. The Rocket Man. Remember the gay biopic Rocket Man coming out of the Peter Spence Fund?
The supremely Catholic film.
Yeah, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa there, Yvonne. I'm sorry I missed that one. What was I thinking? I mean, huge film that we helped to fund there. Mike K., our good friend, The Brick Wall, says, we do need a Catholic Angel Studios. The SSPX is the only organization that would have the financial wherewithal to, I guess, to support that. They don't. The
SSPX don't have money. They don't have money. That's why they don't own their own properties.
Yeah.
That's why they don't have enough priests and properties to go around. They don't have the money. There's this idea that they do, but I know people who are pretty well connected in the SSPX, and they say, no, we don't have money. They wish they had money.
Yeah. It's a slippery slope. I personally, I don't want to win the lottery. We talk about this from time to time. I don't want to win the lottery. I don't want to be responsible and have, $500 million sitting in my bank account. I don't think I would do well under those circumstances. I think the temptation would be horrible. I instead want producer Jake to win the lottery and then just funnel some towards our projects. That's all I really want. I want someone else who has the spiritual strength to withstand the temptation of having access to that kind of wealth. I think that would be soul crushing, as we have seen, to sort of tie in the Church Militant story. Not only has the story included some of the chastity elements of the founder, Michael Boris, but it's the financial elements too that are kind of scandalous. And, the temptations are huge. Again, no matter how you feel about Church Militant in particular, my heart breaks because a Catholic media organization is now crumbling. It had great potential, could have done better. I, of course, didn't like their shenanigans. I didn't like their attacks on trads, and that kind of thing. But, man, imagine what they could have done if they had their act together. And there were a few people there that I do like, and I thought they were honest people. And I tried to, work with some of those people all over the years. And I definitely defended their right to exist and their seat at the table when the EWT and Catholic Radio crowd told me I'm not allowed to do that. So, I don't know, it breaks my heart, but I wanted to give you a chance to chime in on that one too, Dr. Stein.
Well, I talked about that in my video about Father Altman responding, because people in my chat were wanting me to address the Church Militant thing, because yesterday I'd said I would. And, well, it turns out there's an offer on the table to buy Church Militant.
Yeah, Joe Gallagher.
From somebody who, and he has his own new organization, and they've promised to not attack trads anymore, that kind of stuff. And that's fine. But there's a sort of a grim reaper hanging over all of them. And that it's an open secret and publicly reported in the media that weirdly hardly anybody has gone out and run with it. You would have thought that the National Catholic Reporter would have had a field day with this story. Right. There's a priest in New Hampshire who is taking Michael Voris and Church Militant to court, and has been for 2 years now. And it looks like he's about to win and win. And Christine Niles is going to win and win big in his defamation case against them. And with the stage that they are at now, it does not look like Church Militant could survive this. That's how fragile things are over there.
Well, even if that's not, that weren't the case, even if I think you're right. I think that's not going to be good for them. It's going to spell doom. But even if that didn't happen and that wasn't the case going on, and they weren't about to get hit financially, I don't see them lasting. Even if Joe Gallagher buys them, Joe Gallagher doesn't have the persona to carry an organization. He may be a good person in general. I don't know much about him. I'm going to assume the absolute best of him. I know he worked there, means the best, great guy, decent Catholic, not going to come after us, fair and balanced. Fine, great, wonderful. I don't see the organization lasting because people like personalities and the organizations they're associated with. They usually don't like it the other way around.
Church Militant was built on two personalities. on Michael Voris, who found a similar but opposite enough personality in Christine Niles to sort of help anchor their presentation.
Yeah.
And now that they're both gone, I mean, a lot of people point out that a lot of this also was when Milo Yiannopoulos was brought on board. When I heard that they brought him on, because I hadn't watched a video of theirs in years, I was like, oh, that's
bad sign.
I'm not going to attack him. I'm just going to say that there has been a track record of things not usually going well. It could very well be that Milo comes on and people just can't handle like the fact that, say what you want about him. He is clearly smarter than most people he interacts with. And it could very well be that his personality plus that and the things that go with it were just doom for that. And he was not there for very long.
I don't fault a guy who has a lot of sins, chastity sins or otherwise, sins against the Sixth Commandment or otherwise in his background. I had a lot of those in my background. I don't, listen, you want to turn a leaf?
You're a man in the 21st century. Everybody has those in their background to some degree, except for like people who are raised saintly.
And if you're striving for conversion, you're striving for holiness, you're striving to live in a state of grace. Hey, God bless you. God love you. You deserve another shot, right? Like, I mean, absolutely. We should allow for that. So I never had a problem with the idea that Milo is like turning a leaf and saying, okay, my past, my incredible, crazy past, and I got to walk away from that. Yeah. Like, hats off to you, man. I pray that that journey is successful for you. But at the same time, I got to say, because I did interact with Church Militant a few times while he was there, it wasn't looking good. I'm just from the outside looking in, it didn't look good. It wasn't a good look, and it certainly didn't seem that all that behavior was in fact changing, and there was very little accountability as a result of that. So it didn't surprise me in the least to see Milo leave the organization, especially after some of the allegations, and I'm not going to say what they are, but some of the allegations that were say about his behavior while he was there, employed with the organization. I don't know what he's doing today. I heard he wanted to go work for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Did that happen? I have no idea, but I do pray for his conversion. I also pray for Michael Voris. I pray that, in fact, he does get help. And I would love to see him spend the rest of his life quietly trying to live in a state of grace and maintain chastity. I think that would be the best thing for his soul. And I think we should be reminded in all of this that we should pray for these people, even if I agree he should never come back to Church Militant.
Right. I don't have the connection to that organization that people I know who feel that they were directly harmed by that organization and who are taking very public sort of not victory laps, but they're not hiding how happy they are about how things have the recent news. I get why they are like that. I don't have that personal connection, so I'm not going to do that, but it would be obvious that it would probably be a bad idea for Church Militant to try to reestablish the status quo that they had before, even if Christine Niles never works for that organization or an organization like it again. But people need to understand that this lawsuit involving that priest is looming over this. That priest could file a motion with a court to stop any sale until after that lawsuit is resolved. So the Church Militant may be in limbo for years, although his lawsuit began in like 2020, 2021. So it should be almost over by now. I would be surprised if we got very far into 2024 before it became out that, whatever the terms are that they could speak about publicly. Often if these are settled out of court, that then you won't hear about them. But I think they've passed the point of no return on an out of court settlement on this. I think that priest is out for blood. Because
it seems
if you read any of the reporting on it, he alleges that they tried to completely destroy him.
MK Ultra says, a chance to see Anthony and Joe together, getting another cup of coffee to settle in. Deo gracias. Ave Maria. Getting some popcorn. It's like Mystery Science 2000.
We need a Catholic MST3K. We need a Catholic Mystery Science Theater 3000. That would be great.
That would be great.
I would love to watch classic. Oh, you got to go with classic movies. Yeah. Like, I would love to sit there and watch a movie that is great, but whose theology is horrible. Like, I love Planet of the Apes from like 1969. Yeah. And there's some anti-Catholic elements in the sequel where you see these guys who are worshiping a nuclear bomb and they're wearing vestments. but I still love the movie. It's like a guilty pleasure.
Oh, what
but
about
I love MST3K, those movies.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Star Trek films? Like the Star Trek, universe in general is so agnostic, so atheist, centralist. But remember, what film was it? First
What does
Contact.
God need with a starship?
What movie was it? Which one movie was it where they depicted the primitive peoples on another planet who are worshiping an idol, and then they started worshiping the Enterprise after the Enterprise took off out of the sea in front of them? I forget which one that was.
We may have lost Dr. Stein.
Did we lose him? Oh, too
Dr.
bad.
Stein, you there? Okay. We lost
He
him
looks
for now.
he looks
lost him for
totally
now.
frozen.
Yeah. Oh,
We've
there he
lost-
is.
He
He's
might
back.
come back.
Okay.
He's back.
And he's back.
Well,
It's just-
they did the idol worship thing in one of the Abrams Trek films, but the movie that I think of,
Oh, that's right.
I actually
Was-
like Star Trek more the movies for like the 80s and early 90s movies,
Yeah.
more so that than some of the TV shows. But my favorite Trek show is Deep Space Nine because it addressed the elephant in the room is Star Trek. You know what the elephant in the room in Star Trek is? Every race out there has religion.
Yeah.
Except the Federation likes to say humans don't have religion. And then they show you Captain Sisko, who's actually one of my favorite Star Trek captains, comes out and he's having a conversation with his dad, who pulls out a Bible and quotes it directly to him to show you that humans still have religion. And they had an enormous missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about this in Hollywood terms because religion was central to Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
There was
That's
you had this very Tibetan Buddhist religion that the Bajorans had, and they had like their leader was frequently on the space station, and it was a missed opportunity for her to be having some debate with some other alien religious group when out of an airlock walks this Orthodox priest with a full beard on. If you want to have like the just eye-catching, apostolic priest, it's going to be an Orthodox priest or maybe a bishop, right? Have him go there saying he just got back from Earth. Or if you really wanted to, you could have had it even been the Pope, because in Star Trek Enterprise, they had an alien who said he makes a point whenever he encounters a new species to go observe the religious worship. And he said he went to St. Peter's Basilica and watched the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass. Didn't participate, but he said he watched it, which means in Star Trek, at least in the 22nd century, Catholicism still existed. So it's canonically there. And it struck me as a big missed opportunity to not have had, just a sort of a poke in the eye at most of the Star Trek conventions at the time saying, humans still had religion, because humans in Deep Space Nine were considered weird by the aliens for not being upfront with their religious beliefs.
Yeah,
even
for sure.
the Ferengi had religion. Okay,
even the Ferengi. Let's see, who would be their human equivalent? Anyway, maybe another conversation for another day. Angel Knight says, "I'm lost. I never watched any of this. Love listening to you. Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate it." Frank says, "I got to Our Lady of the Lake." Rangale? What is that for first Saturday? Not sure. Bells of St. Mary. Oh, but who is it? Oh, yeah. Mateus. Good morning to you, Mateus. He says, "I feel like we're living in Logan's Run." Was Logan's Run, like, did that start the genre of like Running Man, Hunger Games?
I never saw Logan's Run.
You never saw Logan's Run?
So I don't know that one.
Oh,
I never saw
wow.
Logan's Run. I should probably fix that.
They had
But
that jewel in the
Man-
palm of the hand that lit up, and it was like your time to die. When I was in college, I had a class that forced us to read all this sort of futurist work, sci-fi futurist work, and it was all about population control. And, Star Trek dealt with this too, right? The original 60s series dealt with population control. It was just big in those days. So Logan's Run, that was in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Dealing with this, how do you deal with an overpopulated world? Well, you just regulate it by saying, hey, it's your turn to die today, so you volunteered for the good of your community. You go and you volunteer yourself to be killed. Well, sometimes this jewel would light up and they would be like, oh, I don't want to die. So then they would run, and then they would send these cops after them to go and to capture them, bring them back, and obviously kill them. Well, one of the cops lit up and he ran. So the whole movie is about Logan running Similar themes to the Planet of the Apes. At the end, what do you get? You get a societal transformation, an overhaul, a revolution, similar to what you get in the Hunger Games as well. So that's why I wonder if Logan's Run started that whole genre. Is there a movie before that? Can anybody think of?
I think what started it was the book Brave New World, which was written by Aldous Huxley, whose brother was a major eugenicist, and they two did not get along on that subject at all, even though Huxley was not exactly a good Christian either, but he was at least not so insane as to think that eugenics was a good idea. And the whole point of Brave New World was that that there was an apocalypse, an apocalyptic world war, and the scientists ran the world after the war, and they created this dystopian future where science had become a religion, to the point where everybody made the sign of the T, based off of the Model T, but it was the sign of the cross without the top. Right. Like they worshiped the efficiency of Henry Ford, and human beings were grown in laboratories, and it was just this absolute degenerate future. And that's what he was warning people was coming. and it's why I think that we are superficially living in like an Orwellian future, but really we're living in the highly medicated Brave New World of Aldous Huxley. And that is where it comes from. Now, it's funny. You invoked the movie Running Man. When I was a kid, I loved that movie. And then I read the book, and they're completely different stories. Because the Running Man looks like a modern, and the Running Man book looks like a modern day reality TV show, just ultra violent. Like it's a national manhunt for somebody. That's what, right? Whereas the show is just, some bombed out earthquake zone turned into like a large arena where ridiculous American Gladiator style guys go out and hunt down criminals.
Escape from New York meets the American Gladiator television show.
Pretty much. That's I'm almost certain that Escape from New York had to be the inspiration for the visuals of that movie.
Yeah, I bet it was. I mean, Escape from New York. What an icon of the 80s.
Despite not being a huge hit.
Don't tell Jack Burton that, but Snake Plissken. Woo, come on now. But in Logan's Run, says Mateus, we're told the outside was harmful, and so they enslaved everyone underground. Bingo, Mike. Government control. Yeah, I mean, is dystopian futures prophetic, or is it we're just making these things come to reality because we grew up on these things? We grew up on 1984. We grew up on Logan's Run. We grew up on all of this dystopian. Look at the dystopian genre in film. The Book of Eli was mentioned earlier. We're talking about Denzel Washington. Cannibalism. Someone mentioned Soylent Green. So are we making? What was that film, The Snowpiercer? With Captain America, and they were eating cockroaches formed into jelly bars. I mean, just like if we could create a whole different genre that was maybe more positive and uplifting and bright, and then that took off like wildfire, would that become our future? Because we're, you know what I mean? Like the effect of these genres,
wasn't it?
The effect of these genres on our future. I don't think it's prophetic. I just think that's the sin nature played out in front of us with the types of entertainment that we enjoy.
Yeah, I'm not one who believes that these movies are secretly meant for the ruling elite to brag about their plans, because that's a little too Hollywood for me. But I'm reminded, like, I took a dystopian literature class in a political theory program in grad school, and we had to read a book called We. It was a book that was written by a Soviet novelist who, when he got it done, he had to flee the country to get it published.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And he was talking about the logical outcome of Marxism. And it was an environmental dystopia where everybody had been told that the outside world was dangerous. And you had to stay living in the bubble city in your glass houses where you had no privacy. You got an hour of privacy a day. That was it. And it was everything outside was a green wasteland. Yeah. And it hits watching, the COP28 conference going on in Dubai. That book is a little on the nose.
Yeah,
it's pretty clear that the guys there want us to go back to the Stone Age. But then again, when you dig deep into the green ideology, most of those people don't believe more than 500 million people should exist, and should, of course, be ruled over by the likes of them. By the way.
Yeah, but they want to get to choose which of those people get to live and which of those people get to die. And of course, they're not putting themselves in the category of the ones that die. Of course not. Clockwork Orange is so blasphemous, says Frank Lofton. Tesla bubble cities? Don't say that, Alberto. Don't say that. I'm sure they want that. I don't want that.
I saw Clockwork Orange once many years ago, and I'm good without ever seeing that movie again.
Yeah,
it's a little too. I do have to run at this point, though. So
we'll see you.
I have seen Mad Max. It's good, but I do have to run at this point. So thanks for having me on, and reach out again. Okay.
All right, Dr. Stein. God bless you. Have a great day. I think we'll put a wrap on it today for the show. We appreciate everybody being on the team today. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to do my annual custom in the celebration of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which we have to celebrate early because Friday is a holy day of obligation. We will not be here for live. And at any rate, we're going to have a guest tomorrow to talk about the flower world that predated Our Lady of Guadalupe appearing in 1531. And I think I will read to you, I might even read Bernal Diaz tomorrow. I typically read Warren Carroll and his description of the opening day of business of the temple in Mexico City that inaugurated that temple with 80,000 human sacrifices. I tend to read that every single year, but I might read from Bernal Diaz's work. I'm not sure. I'm going to pray on it, but tomorrow morning you'll get that, plus the guest to talk about the flower world. I find it utterly fascinating, and I hope you do too. Share this with a friend. We'll see you then.